In today's video, we're going to be discussing some new NHL trade rumors focusing on the New York Rangers and the Detroit Red Wings, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top here, I've come across some new NHL trade rumors that I wanted to discuss with you here today. Obviously, we're mainly focusing on the New York Rangers and the Detroit Red Wings. Now, all of the guys we're going to be talking about today are going into their final year of their contract, so they are pending free agents in the 2019 offseason. So obviously, when it comes to contracts being expired, that often will spawn a lot of talk on whether or not that player will return to their current club. Obviously, right now, the Detroit Red Wings are in a bit of a transition phase where they're kind of rebuilding, trying to build back into becoming a playoff team, injecting a lot of youth. So certainly that brings to mind some of their older players, whether or not they'll be sticking around for the long term here. Now, the first player I wanted to discuss today is Gustav Nyquist. Now, Nyquist certainly isn't an older player, but he's been around the league for quite a while. He's certainly somebody you could call a veteran for sure. He's 28 years old. I believe he'll turn 29 before the season starts. I know early in his career it looked as though he might be a 30 to 40 goal scorer, somebody who could probably put up 60, 70 points on a consistent basis, but that hasn't really developed. His play has been down a little bit, but then again, so has the whole team. He's going into his final year of his contract. He's a pending UFA, and it is certainly speculated that he could be on the move this season with the Detroit Red Wings. Now, as we know, the Red Wings are likely going to be having a lot of youth in their lineup this year. There's still some question marks around Henrik Zetterberg. And regardless of what all that happens, more than likely it's going to be a tough year for the Wings. And at this point in time, at least most people are not expecting them to be a playoff team. It certainly makes a lot of sense that as we approach the NHL trade deadline, and if they have the type of season that a lot of people expect, that they likely would be sellers and possibly moving on from a couple of these veteran players. So Nyquist certainly fits that bill. He could certainly help a team who's in contention for a long playoff run take their game up that much higher, because he can be rather offensive, and maybe a change of scenery and a chance to play with some different players certainly might be exactly what he needs to kind of rejuvenate his career. Taking a quick look at Nyquist's last 5 seasons, obviously 5 years ago he put up 28 goals, then he followed that up with a 27-goal campaign, so things were certainly progressing nicely. At that point in time, it was still believed he still had another level to find and would continue to grow. From that point in time, though, his certainly production started to decline. He went down to 17 goals, down to 12 goals. Then last year he did bounce back up and hit 20 goals again, which was certainly nice to see, but he certainly did not become that 30-plus goal scorer longer term that the Red Wings were certainly hoping for. So it certainly does seem possible that the Red Wings likely could move on from Nyquist this season. At this point in time, he hasn't been linked to any specific teams, but I think there's going to be a lot of teams out there that are going to be making the playoffs looking to add scoring at the last minute like they always do. So there should be no shortage of a market for Nyquist. Now, he does hold a form of a no-trade clause in his contract, so he will get some say over where he ends up. But obviously, I don't think he'll be too picky here. At the end of the day, the article I was reading referenced the fact that he likely would waive for a chance to go on a deep playoff run and have a shot at a Stanley Cup, and then he can decide his future later during his unrestricted free agency in the summer of 2019. Now, staying with Detroit here for a moment, I also want to discuss goaltender Jimmy Howard. Now, Howard was also referenced in this article from Helen St. James, is where I got the information here. So now Howard obviously is 34 years old, entering the final year of his contract as well. So obviously that terms a lot of speculation over whether or not this is his last year with the Red Wings. Now, he's been there for quite some time. He's been a pretty good trooper for the Red Wings over the years. But obviously they also signed Jonathan Bernier this offseason, who is a bit younger than Howard. Howard's 34, Bernier is 30. So depending on how Bernier plays, it is possible that Bernier may become the starter and Howard may become the backup. Obviously, in the recent past, it was considered that Howard maybe, end up becoming the backup to Peter Mrazek. That never really came to be, but that was largely due to Mrazek not playing well. And of course, now he's gone from the organization. Another thing to keep in mind is that they did have Jared Coreau at one point in time was considered to be a potential goalie to come up to the NHL and be a regular, and now he's gone. They don't really have a lot of goaltending depth within the Red Wings prospect pool. So at this point in time, they don't really have anybody who's ready to step up and move up to the NHL level. So it is definitely going going to be Howard and Bernier, and it could go either way here. The Red Wings could decide if Bernier's playing well enough that they might be willing to take the chance to trade Howard and recoup some assets. They could always consider re-signing him during the offseason as well. Secondly, to go with that is that they very well may let him go and just let Bernier take over as a starter, see what else they can obtain during free agency next year. There should be some goalies available that they could sign as a backup option while they continue to develop some of their younger guys within their system over the next couple of years until somebody else is ready to step up and move up here to the NHL. So could this be the final year for Jimmy Howard in Detroit? Now, this largely depends, too, on a lot of the playoff teams if they're really in need for a goaltender, because obviously as teams approach the deadline, they're going to depend on what those guys are looking to add. So if there is a market for Jimmy Howard, I think there's a pretty good possibility that we could see him moved and then possibly re-sign with the Wings in the offseason. Or it is possible that they may just say, you know what, Bernier's doing well enough, we'll let him take over the starting job. We'll bring in somebody else via free agency in the summertime, and we'll move on from Howard and recoup whatever assets they can. So let me know down in the comment section, do you think it's quite possible this could be the final season for Jimmy Howard in the Detroit Red Wings organization? Now, jumping over to the New York Rangers, I want to discuss center iceman Kevin Hayes. Now, as we know, Hayes was an RFA and just recently came to a new contract on a one-year deal with the Rangers over $5.1 million. It was reported he was looking for a 5-year deal around $5.5 million, and the Rangers would just not commit to him that long-term at all. I'm not sure it was specifically about money. They just seem to be reluctant on a longer-term commitment. At this point in time, any player who's not that he's an older player by any means, he's got 4 full seasons under his belt, 26 years old, so he's certainly not an older player by any means. Now, Kevin Hayes is a big guy. Obviously, he's over 6'5", over 200 pounds. He's a big center iceman, would make a great number 2, number 3 center on a lot of teams. So it does look as though there should be a pretty decent trade market for him if he stays with the Rangers and is traded near the NHL deadline. Obviously, center icemen would come at a premium, especially that time of year. Teams are always looking for extra depth down the middle here for the playoffs, so he could certainly add a lot of value to any team really making a good run here at a long playoff run with a shot at a Stanley Cup. So for whatever reason, it seems like the Rangers are pretty, at this point in time, non-committal to Hayes on a long-term deal. I'm not sure if that's just something across the board. They don't really want to do long-term deals with any players right now. They kind of want to take a wait-and-see approach. But the article that I was referencing to get this information indicated that it wasn't believed that regardless of how well he does this year, that he's likely going to be traded no matter what, as they don't want to commit to Kevin Hayes long-term. They don't want to get into that type of contract with this player. So more than likely, Kevin Hayes is traded sometime before the NHL trade deadline. At this point in time, obviously, it's too early to link him to any specific teams, but the information just referenced that the Rangers absolutely do not want to commit to him longer term, and it looks as though that he likely is going to be traded, and that next contract of his is going to have to come from another club. I do think they could get a pretty decent return for Kevin Hayes. If you take a look at what they got for the Rick Nash deal at the deadline last year, I don't think they'll get quite that much. Obviously, he's not quite the same player, but really, if you think about the fact that he's a really big guy, plays center, for a lot of teams, he'd be a number 2 center, a number 3 on some teams. I think that the return could be rather nice and help this team move forward. But at the same time, they do need some experience in the lineup. And Kevin Hayes has been a pretty good soldier for the Rangers and put up some pretty decent numbers. So let me know down in the comments, especially if you're a Rangers fan, what do you think of the fact that the Rangers don't seem to want to commit to Hayes longer term, and that this likely is going to be his last year? So I want to know what you think of that. And what do you think, what kind of return do they think they would get on the trade market for Kevin Hayes? If you missed the video we put out earlier today, we just recently launched Top Shelf Hockey merchandise. We're now selling Top Shelf Hockey t-shirts for both men and women, as well as a few other accessory products. So if you're interested, please check out the link down below in the description. The store is launched through spreadshirt.ca.com. They will ship internationally no matter where you are. So if you're interested in obtaining any Top Shelf Hockey merchandise, please go check it out. And any support you give to the channel, it certainly is greatly appreciated. Now, if you're new to the channel here as well, I hope you consider subscribing. We do cover all 31 NHL teams, and there is plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.